He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Hello, I'm Simon Morris. Is movie-going a lot snobbier than it used to be, or has it always been thus? There seems to be a tendency to avoid certain titles and queue up for others based entirely on, I don't know, whether it's aimed at your sort of people. Are you a Fast and Furious type or a consumer of high-end motion picture art, for example? Are you more interested in who made it or who's in it? In other words, is it a film or is it a movie?
All the shooting. I love that stuff, you know, the killing.
A lot of killing.
Anybody order fried sauerkraut? Can you Nazi bastards?
As I say, snobbery. I had to go to one last week and was asked that very question. Was it a movie or a film? I thought a bit and realised it was neither. It was cinema, God help us. But the once respectable movie has had a bad rap recently. These days it generally means a wildly expensive title you've already seen.
When the need for certainty is absolute and the odds are deemed impossible, the mission falls to him.
Should he choose to accept?
It wasn't always this way. Time was when a movie, a real Hollywood movie, used to be an idea that people worked on with a view to making it a bit better. So they'd hire the best stars, a few good writers and a skillful director, cross their fingers and do what they could with it.
Every instinct warned me to beware that something more dangerous, more deadly than I'd ever known before was in that room. And suddenly,
I like that. I'd like more.
But now it's an idea that everyone's trying to make more popular. So they turn to social media, hire the best influencers, and when in doubt, turn to AI for inspiration. I know, that's a bit different, isn't it?
Stand up.
Let's go! Oh my!
Cheer. And experience the Disney classic like never before. Disney's Snow White.
Mainstream audiences may claim to favour movies over highbrow films. I just want to be entertained is the usual phrase. But they've got more chance of entertainment at a smart festival highlight than at yet another sequel. At least the people involved were trying to make something they actually liked.
15. Cash up front.
Deal.
Deal.
Well, this week, 3 films from different necks of the cinematic woods. Daniel Craig couldn't be less James Bond in an adaptation of William S. Burroughs' Queer. And downstream, a comedy horror film sold almost entirely on the strength of its title, Death of a Unicorn. But first, it's mostly in black and white, it's in several languages, it's got pandas and puppets. From its triumph at the Cannes Film Festival, its Grand Tour.
Clean naman yan.
Midway through Grand Tour, I had no idea it was midway through, by the way. I thought it was nearly over. Anyway, I wondered what it was reminding me of. An Englishman stranded in deepest Myanmar, Burma as it was in 1917, waits for the arrival of his fiancée. He loses his nerve and flees for parts unknown.
Eri Nigaro, Tangoya Sashikunet, January La,
If you're a fan of the works of English Old Master Somerset Maugham, the setting might be familiar. Indeed, I believe eccentric Portuguese director Miguel Gomes dipped into a couple of Maugham's short stories before going his own way. But it certainly explains why the 2 leads are English, despite being played in Portuguese.
Faz ideia do que será feito na mão. Veio de Londres para se casar comigo.
But even Portuguese speakers will find themselves on the back foot in Grand Tour, a film that's told in not one but 6 different Asian languages. No sooner has Edward Abbott left Rangoon for Bangkok, followed by Singapore, Saigon and the rest, when yet another narrator steps up to help. Thank heavens for subtitles, you might say.
แต่เธอไม่ท้อใจมอลลี่ควานหาทั่วบางกอกเป็นเวลา2 วัน 2 คืน
Ela tem andado a seguir, intuindo o meu percurso.
Or maybe not, because often the subtitled narrative seems to be telling a quite different story from what we're seeing on the screen. Lead character Edward vanishes for stretches of the film while the cameraman wanders through the jungle looking at stuff, including pandas for people who haven't seen those curious creatures in the wild before. Either on or off screen, Grand Tour is about Edward trying to escape his intended, Molly Singleton. But every time he arrives somewhere new, there's a good chance he'll be met by a telegram from Molly, who seems both persistent and blessed with clairvoyance. How does she do it, wonders Edward?
Vous voulez envoyer un télégramme à tous les hôtels de Saigon?
Sim.
A mulher mais teimosa do mundo.
And if we're equally curious, we're in luck, because midway through the film, the moment you may remember when I was starting to wish it really was one of Somerset Maugham's gripping short stories, Grand Tour takes a wild shift back in time and place. Back, in fact, to when Molly herself gets off the boat at Rangoon.
Miss Singleton, conte-nos o que veio aqui fazer o Grand Tour, Rangoon, Singapura.
Vim para me casar. O meu noivo é funcionário em Mandalay, mas ele fugiu.
As Molly explains to her fellow passengers, the whole thing is really a bit of a game. Hence the amused raspberry there, a noise she makes whenever something amuses her. Now, I have to say I wasn't quite as taken by it as director Miguel Gomez, who found it endearingly English.
Vous êtes très belle. Mrs. Sanders vous aime beaucoup.
Nhoque, estou noiva de outro homem. Hei de casá-lo, a bem ou mal.
Different strokes, I suppose, or, as they say in places like Saigon, chacun a son goût. Yes, the narrative baton may have been passed to a Vietnamese speaker, but most of the people Molly meets there tend to talk in French. Still, no time to waste. She's back on the hunt for the elusive Edward.
Tinha andado a fugir dela como cobarde.
Tudo correrá bem, se Deus quiser.
Now, 2 things may strike you watching Grand Tour. First, while we're told that the action takes place around 1917, we're not visually wedded to that period. Plenty of the action seems to take place in relatively modern times. For instance, I don't remember Maugham's characters tootling around Saigon on motor scooters.
Abandonou-me no cais e embarcou para Singapura. Vou atrás dele. A ver se o agarro pelo esganete.
There's also a tendency to slip in and out of colour when the mood suits, particularly when we, but possibly not Edward or Molly, visit an indigenous puppet show, precise location unclear. Not one for the over-literal is what I'm saying, more for those who take their cue from the title. It really is an old-fashioned grand tour of the sort that Victorian and Edwardian English aristocrats used to go in for.
Abandona-se ao mundo, Mr. Abbott. Verá como ele é generoso consigo.
Does the girl get the boy? It's not really that sort of film. Do we find out what happens to either Molly or Edward? Well, again, you might be asking the wrong question. Do you get a quirky and beautiful travelogue to scratch your head at? Well, I can answer that one. Grand Tour won Best Director at Cannes last year purely on the strength of how it looked. And for some, that's clearly enough.
他坐船去上游了，前台如此回答，还补充说茉莉是没办法追上的。茉莉一听就炸了，没什么是不可能的，这位先生。
Actor Daniel Craig may have made his name in mainstream entertainments like James Bond and the Knives Out whodunits, but no one could accuse him of not taking the work seriously. On the contrary, I've lost count of the number of times I've seen Craig giving his all in a movie and wondered, are you sure you want to do it like that?
I shall never forget that. The unspeakable horror that froze the lymph in my glands. The lymph glands, that is, of course, when that baneful word seared my reeling brain. Homosexual.
Daniel Craig's first big role after seeing off James Bond in the rather misnamed No Time to Die is undoubtedly different. From Italian director Luca Guadagnino comes an adaptation of a novella by American Beat Generation writer William S. Burroughs. It's called Queer.
I thought of the painted, simpering female impersonators, I'd seen in a Baltimore nightclub. Could it be that I was one of those?
Neither the title nor the subject matter should come as much of a surprise to anyone remotely familiar with either director or writer. Burroughs, like his contemporaries Jack Kerouac and Allen Ginsberg, wrote what he knew, meaning mostly himself. And Guadagnino dipped into this sort of world, albeit the sunnier side of the street, in his film Call Me By Your Name.
The wise old queen who taught me that I had a duty to live, to conquer hate with knowledge and sincerity and love.
The surprise, of course, is in Daniel Craig's full-blooded performance as a loser. He plays Lee lounging around a Mexican town in the 50s doing not much. He hangs out at a bar called the Ship Ahoy with a bunch of like-minded American men, all looking for pretty much what he's looking for, someone to hook up with.
There's no use fighting it. The difficulty is to convince someone else he is really part of you.
One night, Lee is strolling down a dusty Mexican street when he pauses to watch people betting on a cockfight, all very 50s noir. And through the crowd, he catches the eye of a dashing young man called Eugene. Who is he? Lee asks around, particularly his friend Joe, a shorter, tubbier and more badly dressed Jason Schwartzman than I've ever seen, I think. The question at top of mind, of course, is would Eugene be interested? He seems to spend equal time with attractive men and women.
You think he's queer? I've been spending time with him. I can't tell.
Well, could always just ask.
No.
Lee strikes up an acquaintance with Eugene and then more than a mere acquaintance. There seems to be mutual attraction, but the deeply insecure Lee is constantly on edge. Does Eugene feel the same way he does?
What else should I say?
I've got bigger fish to fry.
Bigger fish is right. Cold, slippery, hard to catch.
Lee and Eugene seem to hit it off, despite the fact that Lee, like Burroughs himself, has another failing he's been keeping under his hat a bit.
I presume Dumais told you about my proclivities.
Yes.
A curse.
Being both a junkie and queer is definitely bad news in 50s America, and it's the main reason that Lee found himself hiding out in Mexico. There's no sign that he achieved the cliched trifecta by also being a commie. Frankly, Lee seems far too selfish to have any interest in anyone but himself. And now, Eugene for a while.
What's she got to lose?
Independence.
I want to talk to you. Without speaking.
In the last act of Queer, the two take off in search of non-political inner enlightenment. After foregoing heroin for hallucinogens one night, Lee decides to find a famous specialist in plant-based insights, one Dr. Cotton.
Why don't you come with me?
The acting publicity for Queer has mostly gone to Daniel Craig's performance as a jaded, self-obsessed junkie. But the blue ribbon goes to an unrecognisable Leslie Manville as a fugitive Captain Trips. The former Princess Margaret and Mrs. Harris Goes to Paris looks like she arm-wrestled Steve Buscemi for the role.
What are you so afraid of? Door's already open, can't close it now.
The film stands and falls on the lead character, of course, but after a while Lee's grinding selfishness, possibly reflecting that of his original author, outweighs the best intentions of director Guadagnino and star Craig. I did find myself occasionally shaken by Queer, but very rarely stirred.
All he can do is look away.
All in all is all we all are.
But why would you?
All is all we all are. All in all.
This was a good week for big, dumb, not particularly expensive movies. There's a Minecraft movie for fans of the video game, Novocaine for fans of painless comedy action, and A Working Man, possibly a working title for the latest Jason Statham movie that no one could be bothered changing. But one seemed irresistible.
A lot of species in this area are rare. What exactly are we saying this is, though?
I think we know exactly what it is.
A horse-like mammalia.
With some sort of protrusion or growth.
It's a f***ing unicorn.
It's called Death of a Unicorn, and on the strength of that clip, you'd have to say, to quote the movie Mank, it seems director-proof. It stars the reliable Paul Rudd as hungry lawyer Elliot, with the likeably deadpan Jenna Ortega as his teenage daughter Ridley. They're driving through a wilderness area for a meeting with the obscenely rich Leopold family.
It's truly untouched by man.
Spotted a big game on the way in.
The Leopolds are clearly inspired by the frightful Sackler pharmaceutical dynasty. Elliot is hoping he can butter them up for a job. Ridley promises to behave herself. But then...
The Leopolds donated this entire nature preserve. And they care about a lot of things, not just pharmaceuticals.
Fine. I will sit there and smile.
But then they hit something that looks like, well, My Little Pony with a horn. Elliot stashes it in the boot of the car, then hurries to meet the Leopolds. Englishman Will Poulter plays yet another of his patented American jerks, while Taya Leone, who I've always rather liked despite some pretty awful films, is his mum.
Sorry, we're late.
What happened? You walked from the airport or what?
It's perfect timing.
I need you to act like everything is fine.
Is there something in your car?
It soon becomes obvious that the one-horned horse is far from dead. They eventually get it under control and summon the Leopold scientists to find out what it is and what you can do with it. And soon they get a pleasant surprise.
Whatever it is, it seems to be the cure for cancer.
Cancer? That's the biggest one.
An opportunity for greatness, for immortality. I've never been so alive.
But where are my manners? I haven't introduced the father of the house, the ailing Odell Leopold, overplayed to the max by Richard E. Grant. I say ailing, but in fact, once he's had a snort of powdered unicorn horn, he's up and doing, and getting on the phone to offer his richest clients more eternal youth than Ponce de Leon ever dreamed of.
Dad.
Hold on just a second, Red.
3 grams at 2.5.
Right, okay, 2.5 at 300.
No,
Got it.
no, 3 at 2.5.
Oh, sorry.
Sharp
Yeah.
ears, do better.
You're right, I apologize.
What's going on?
Oh my gosh, I've never seen so much money before in my life.
But what of Elliot and daughter Ridley? Well, you might as well forget Elliot, who's behaving like any unscrupulous lawyer, suddenly finding himself neck-deep in a money pit. But Ridley, who's been doing her own unicorn research, isn't so sure. This smacks of tampering in matters beyond their ken. And her brief contact with the unicorn's powers suggests it's shortly getting even further beyond their ken.
Unicorns used to be seen like these divine monsters because people fully believe that they could heal literally anything.
It's an opportunity for immortality.
We have a moral imperative to harvest every last one.
Closer to home, it seems My Little Unicorn is proving all but impossible to kill, and it might be summoning help. Out in the forest surrounding the Leopold hot tub are strange, unearthly noises.
I think it must be a moose mating season or something. I was about done anyhow. Pass me that rope.
Well, spoiler alert, the chances of that bellowing being an amorous moose are slim to none. A movie called Death of a Unicorn may be skimping a little on the death part at the moment, but it's unlikely to do without the unicorns. Big, angry, saber-toothed unicorns, it turns out.
There are two of them? They're gonna kill us.
I'll do whatever I have to take care of you. You would retreat in the face of opportunity.
Is this a good idea? One thing writer-director-producer Alex Schaffman seems to have overlooked is that unicorns are famously ethereal, almost angelic beings, rather than fast, furious and violent. And much as we'd like to see Big Pharma get some serious, painful unicorning, it feels we're losing something along the way.
Ridley? Are you okay?
It kind of felt like it was showing me something. I get this feeling I don't think we're supposed to be here.
One for fans of Jenna Ortega and the title Death of a Unicorn, I'd say. And while the script is all over the place, it's undeniable that the Leopold family members are played by three people having an awful lot of fun.
I'm picking up good vibrations. Here's hoping we kill Bigfoot on the way home, huh?
Very much a movie rather than a film, let alone cinema. And while there's 20 more minutes of it than anyone could possibly want or need, at least it doesn't take itself remotely seriously. Take popcorn, but possibly don't bring your pony. And on that rare recommendation on this show of kindness to animals, it's time to go. I'm Simon Morris, and I hope you'll join me at the movies, same time next week.